Crossfire was a huge Counter-Strike clone in Asia and South America. Microsoft decided to buy the rights to Crossfire, make a sequel called CrossfireX, and turn it into an Xbox exclusive. And I don't mean a fake exclusive where it's also on PC, that's still not exclusive, Microsoft. I mean an actual Xbox exclusive. What? Hey, Jarek here. When I say exclusive, that's only half right. Because while CrossfireX is only on the Xbox One or Xbox Series S, Crossfire HD, effectively the same thing but with some differences, is also on PC but only available in Asia. It's weird. To make things even weirder, Microsoft decided to pull a Medal of Honor. The single player is made by Remedy, whereas the multiplayer is made by a dev studio over in Korea. So two totally different studios, with two totally different games running on different engines. As you probably predicted, this game has a ton of problems. But you know what doesn't have problems? Today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is special because I get to talk about our balls. Yep, today's sponsor is Manscaped. But they actually want you to know that they make more products than just for trimming around your junk. They even sent me a package, not that one, so that you can see their new product, 5 steps in 5 minutes. In that package also came some boxers and a t-shirt. Okay, they still want you to know they're about protecting your junk, but it's a fine shirt. Probably make a good gag gift, pun intended. Okay, so this stuff is actually about skin and hair care. The 5 steps in 5 minutes is really just what you'll be doing when you take a shower. Okay, so step 1 is shampoo and conditioner, which they legitimately sent me because you all know I'm going to be using a lot of this. Step 2 is pretty obvious. This is the body wash. This is more shower gel. It also doesn't smell overpowering, which I'm thankful for because it classifies itself as cologne fragrance, which could mean that you smell like, you know, a high school locker room, but thankfully that's not the case. Step 3 is what they call the hydrating body spray. I was incredibly skeptical of this because it's supposed to do basically what creams do, moisturizers that you rub into your skin. You spray this about 4 inches away from your skin, you rub it in, and then it's supposed to keep your skin moisturized. Surprisingly, this does work decently well. Step 4, deodorant. This is the deodorant gel. It doesn't clump up, it doesn't stain your clothes, it doesn't smell too overpowering. It's deodorant, it does what it's supposed to. And step 5, lip balm. Now, I always have chapped lips, and I've been using this more than any of the other products. This works surprisingly well. I probably shouldn't be getting off-brand store stuff. This works way better than the off-brand stuff. So if you want to try out this stuff for yourself, you can get 20% off plus international shipping by using promo code JAREK at the link down below in the video information. Again, 20% off and free international shipping. Just check that link down below and use promo code JAREK. As always, a big thanks goes to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. It is always fun to get to talk about balls publicly to everyone. And let's continue on to the video. Oh boy, where do I start? I guess we'll start with the single player. Don't worry, I'll talk about the multiplayer later. Now, CrossfireX is technically free to play, but that's only the multiplayer. The single player comes in 2 different campaigns. These 2 campaigns, both are about 2 hours each, and they both cost $10. So, if you want to get the full single-player experience, you will spend $20 for about 4 to 5 hours. Sure, I guess. You can also get it on Game Pass, so there's that. I guess I'll start with the graphics, but I have a huge asterisk here. I don't have an Xbox Series S or Xbox Series X or whatever Microsoft is naming their consoles nowadays because they're terrible at naming things. Pretty much every game that comes out on their new consoles also comes out on PC, and if I'm primarily playing first-person shooters, I don't really have a reason to buy the next-gen console, so all I got is my OG Xbox One. This game did come out on Xbox One, but needless to say, that experience is going to be a little bit worse than the next generation experience. At least I assume. I can't say firsthand. This game is not exactly the most polished, so maybe it's just as bad. But if we're talking about the campaign, honestly, the graphics are fine. There is a predictably awful amount of texture pop in. My gosh, I can't even explain how bad this is. But I don't know if this is because I'm playing on the original Xbox One or if it's just always like this. Other than that, this game looks and runs fine. It's not winning any awards, but I mean, it doesn't look awful. The frame rate is fine. I didn't really have any major drops. I think predictably my biggest complaint is that the FOV is really bad, but as a console game, I don't expect to be able to change that. So what are you gonna do? Overall, when it comes to the graphics, I don't have a whole lot to say. Aside from the texture streaming issue and the FOV being bad, it looks fine. It runs fine, the animations are fine, that's basically it. And that's a good segue to the story and the gameplay because my gosh, this game is just a slog. As I mentioned, this game comes in 2 different quote-unquote operations. But the fun part is that after you buy these campaigns, they download in-game. They don't download on your dashboard. And for whatever reason, this takes forever. It took me 3 hours to download these campaigns. I have a gig download speed. There's no way it should take that long. My internet was working fine. My Xbox was plugged in through Ethernet. I was having no issues in that regard. It just took forever. I'm glad I decided to download this game the day before I wanted to stream, not the day of, or I wouldn't have started till like midnight. Anyway, once you're finally in game, you will quickly notice that the controls are different than the multiplayer because this runs on a different engine, so you're gonna have to adjust those. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself because I usually like to talk about the controls when I'm talking about gameplay, but this is going to be right in your face. These controls are awful. Something about the acceleration in this game makes aiming next to impossible. But there was something I changed that drastically helped. I noticed that horizontal sensitivity is way faster than vertical sensitivity. Even though in the menus they say they're the same, they are not. I put vertical sensitivity about 20 higher than horizontal and it was close to the same and aiming was instantly so much easier. And by easier, I mean it was more doable and still felt really bad, but man, I don't know why they did this. Multiplayer has the same issue, it's even worse, I'll talk about that later. This game also heavily features a bullet time mechanic. It's always charging, so you will use it a lot. Now this should be very useful. After all, turning to slow motion whenever you want sounds like a superpower, and it's been fun in other games. However, in this game, it doesn't work the same way. Everything is slow motion until you shoot, and then it speeds up. The best comparison is like how slow motion works in Superhot, how on time moves when you are moving. However, in this case, time moves when you are shooting. While slow motion is still useful, it's nowhere near as useful as regular bullet time. But to make things even worse, this also makes aiming near impossible. I actually thought it was bugged at first. My aim was going all over the place and I had no idea why. Once I figured out that things speed up when I shoot, it became easier, but easier in a way that felt like I was struggling to fight the game just to shoot at my target. They definitely made this change for visual spectacle, not for gameplay, because it doesn't feel good. Another obnoxious little thing I found is that if you're standing on top of a gun that you can pick up, you can't reload. Yep, you heard that right. It totally stops your ability to reload. The reason is because picking up a weapon and reloading is the same button. However, picking up a weapon requires you to hold the reload button down. So why does this conflict with my reloading? There is no reason this should happen. One of the things I also noticed is that I wanted to rebind my buttons because I use an Elite controller, which has paddles on the back of it. I wanted these to align with what I use in Halo. And you can rebind the buttons. If you go into the menu, it does let you. Except for the B button, because the B button means to go back. So if you try to bind B to anything, it goes back and doesn't bind. How? How do you have this problem? That's such an oversight. Effectively, this means you can't rebind the B button, or any buttons at all if the B button is integral to what you want to change. So yeah, we're already getting into problems, and I haven't even started talking about the story or the gameplay. I guess we'll go to the story. God, this is so generic and boring. The first campaign plays out like any modern military shooter you've ever played, but even more boring. In fact, I don't remember any of the names after playing through the second campaign, and I just played it a couple of hours ago. They don't give you any backstory to these characters, you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You're going into a fictional country that I presume is either in the Middle East or Russia, I don't know. And you're here because apparently there's some bad organization and bad guy doing bad guy things. You have your squad, which could have been interesting, but the end result is just following NPCs talking most of the time. Now, every once in a while, you go into these dreamlike sequences, which could have been interesting. This dude seems to be losing his mind. It's never made clear why he is. It just doesn't get explained, but he is, and these are the only sections in the game that actually felt like Remedy was making this game. Keep in mind, Remedy made Alan Wake and Control. Remedy is not a bad studio. The story is predictable, characters will constantly stab you in the back in ways you expected hours ago. The voice acting is occasionally laughably bad in a really dumb way.
Let's get him! We must get him, guys!
That voice acting, did you guys hear that? We must get him, guys. And the campaigns will abruptly end without any real explanation. In fact, the first story is basically just setting up the second one. Literally nothing in the first story matters except for the last 5 minutes. So let's move on to the second one. This one is a little less modern military, generic spunk gargle wee wee in visual tone, and by that I mean there's less brown and gray and more sci-fi, but the story is still written in the same terrible way. Characters will still backstab you out of nowhere, it will still abruptly end. But the main character is at least easier to follow. The main character is Torres. He's an orphan thief that is destined to become prophet. We're now playing Crisis. This is literally the Crisis 1 opening. Like, am I tripping? Is this not just Crisis? I'll explain. During the first story, you're effectively trying to rescue this dude who can apparently see the future, and in this future, he saw somebody in a suit that is apparently going to be really bad for the world and make society collapse or something. I don't know, they don't explain more than that. Well, in the second story, you become the dude in the suit. That's the story, that's it. That's all you need to know. All the while, they do every single stupid action movie cliche. There's another evil group. I guess your group is just going to stand there looking at them, pointing guns at each other, just talking, not doing anything, even though you just killed tons of them moments before. The main character finally corners the bad guy and points a gun at him, but walks so close that the other guy can just spin around and take the gun, because no one saw that coming. Every single fight scene has about 1 million cuts for no reason. What is going on here? This is the stuff that you will see in bad action movies. Not even B movies, but genuinely bad movies. Usually cuts like this are because they're trying to hide up bad choreography. But in a video game, I don't know if that really applies. Either that or just having a really shitty director. It's probably that one. And almost everything in this game happens in some sort of cutscene or some sequence where someone's talking. There's very little actual gameplay. So let's talk about that. The gameplay. This is Spunk Gargle Wee Wee through and through. If you don't know what Spunk Gargle Wee Wee is, let me read you the description. Spunk Gargle Wee Wee is a subgenre of first-person shooter games. These games are very linear and focused on telling a story or showing spectacular cutscenes rather than gameplay or challenging the player. Hence, they often have regenerating health, plenty of guides towards the next scene. Oftentimes, these games are extremely easy. The player does not have to perform well to win because the NPC allies will win combats on their own, while the player can hardly die at all. Mistakes of the player are not supposed to disturb the flow of the story. Since Spunk Gargle Wee Wee are more focused on linear storytelling than on gameplay, they could also be defined as interactive movies. Yeah, this phased out for a reason. These were all the rage around 2009 when everything wanted to be Call of Duty, and it ruined every single player first-person shooter at that time. Thank God that ended. I don't know why we needed to bring that up. Like, you're 10 years late to that craze. Let it die. To give you an idea of how scripted this game is, I had one section where I could keep going forward up this road, but if I did, there was a kill barrier. Why? Because the game devs wanted you to go the other way, idiot. My biggest problem with games like this is that you, the player, are not playing these games. The game devs are playing the games. You're just doing exactly what has been scripted to be done. There is no freedom as a player to play a video game. It really is an interactive movie. Most of the time, you're sitting there listening to friendly NPCs talk while walking or waiting for them to open a door. Things are so scripted that you may walk into a cutscene, seeing the main bad guy talk to someone else. The main bad guy walks off and two of their little tiny grunts walk up to where you are. And even though you and your buddy killed hundreds of these guys before, you decide to hide and run away. You hide, but your other guy gets captured. He just kind of surrenders. Why? It's been established he's very good in combat. He could have just killed them, but no, it was convenient for the story, so just let him get captured. I cannot stress how boring and repetitive this gameplay flow is. There is nothing in the game that is unique or new. You will fight the same enemy over and over again. The only difference between enemy types is that some have more armor, and that's it. There are occasionally drones to shoot out of the sky. That hardly counts. And you don't have a wide variety of weapons either, which is very weird because the multiplayer has a ton of guns. So where are they in the single player? Speaking of guns, these are, well, odd. At close to medium range, they actually do feel pretty okay. There will be some spread if you hold down the trigger, so you do need the tap fire. However, once you start getting to the long range, you start realizing that these guns are really dumb. If you are tap firing these guns in fully automatic at range, you're still not going to hit your target. If you turn it to semi-automatic, it's magically pinpoint accurate. You literally can be tap firing, making it semi-auto while keeping it in full auto when you won't hit your target. Why? Being able to control your weapon means quite literally nothing past about medium range. You're forced to put it to semi-auto. And it really doesn't help that the AI is absurdly dumb. They are going to run straight into your bullets, or stand in the open shooting at you, or sit behind cover shooting at you. That's it. That's all they're gonna do. As I've said many times before, I would rather fight an intelligent squad of enemies rather than hundreds of the same boring enemy over and over again. That's why Fear is so good and why this game is so trash. It gets stale fast, and you'll get really, really bored. In fact, fact, I didn't exactly know how the campaigns were going to work. I thought maybe it was part 1 of the story I bought, and then part 2 was also part of that story, so that if I selected part 1, I would just end up playing part 1 and part 2. Then I realized, nope, I only beat the first part of the campaign, and I had a whole nother campaign to play. Oh man, I don't want to do this. How long is this other operation? I was honestly hoping the 2 operations were put together. They're not. The only time this game attempts to mix things up is at the very end, where it's suddenly crisis. You get this suit, you can be invisible, you can do a bunch of melee takedowns. It's neat, it's fun, it's different. It's not amazing, but it's trying to do something. It lasts all 20 minutes, and then you kill the villain in a cutscene. Yep. That's how the game ends. No, wait, sorry, there's another cutscene after where now there's apparently other people in suits. That never happened before, and it abruptly ends. What? Apparently this is setting up the multiplayer. I don't know, it makes no sense. Needless to say, even if you enjoy the generic Spunkargo wee stuff that I hate, which is totally fine, you won't enjoy this game. There's nothing here for anyone. Now we move to the multiplayer, and oh my god, there's so many more issues here. Let's double back to the controls. They somehow got worse. First off, you'll need to change all your controls here, because there are different controls here than in the campaign since they run on different engines. They still have the same horizontal and vertical sensitivity issue though. I don't know why, but the aim acceleration is even worse. This feels so bad. If there wasn't strong aim assist, I wouldn't be able to hit anything. And it's not like I'm new with controllers. I have my Elite V2. This is my Halo controller. I play shooters with controllers when I need to. This game is just so off. Anyway, there's 2 different multiplayer settings, Modern and Classic. Classic is predictably just Counter-Strike clone, although this feels way off from Counter-Strike. You move really fast, which is out of place for what this is. As I said, aiming is downright impossible, and this just is so bad. This doesn't even work as a Counter-Strike clone. For Classic, you do have 4 different game modes you can choose. Meanwhile, over in the Modern setting, you have 2, with 1 soon to come. Modern is what you would expect. There is sprinting and aim down sights. But I immediately found a massive issue. So when you first start out, you only get 3 different loadouts. You can choose between an M4, an AK, and a SCAR. Right away, I noticed that the M4 kept de-scoping me for seemingly no reason. And this didn't occasionally do it. It was like every time I tried to shoot at someone, it would just unscope me. There's no de-scoping mechanic in this game. I found out this is apparently a bug with that gun. You literally can't aim with it. So I moved on to the SCAR. And then I found out the SCAR has literally no aim assist, so the SCAR is also bugged and you can't shoot anything. That leaves just one of 3 starting weapons that actually functions like it's supposed to, the AK. This is comically bad. To make things even worse, while there is a lot of weapons in the game, you certainly won't be using many of them. The game starts you out with 5,000 GP. That's this game's in-game currency. Guns cost around 2,000 to 2,200 GP. So after you get a couple of guns, you will need more GP. Well, I had about 1,900 and ran out of GP and figured, okay, well, I'll play another game so I can unlock another gun. When I was done with that game, I only had about 1930 GP. Do you know how long you were going to need to grind to unlock anything? Do I need to remind you that the multiplayer is free to play with microtransactions? Yeah, it's one of those games. If you want to unlock anything, you're going to pay for it. That or spend 2,000 years trying to unlock anything, which people aren't going to do. It's predatory and absolutely garbage. To make things even worse, you know, I mentioned there were different game modes you can play. You know, search and destroy, domination, team deathmatch. Well, actually, Team Deathmatch is only playable in Classic mode because that's what I think of when I think Counter-Strike Team Deathmatch. Meanwhile, over in Modern, you basically get Domination, which, to be fair, is actually pretty neat. You start out in a skyscraper trying to fight over multiple objectives, and then you zipline down, and it basically becomes an entirely different map. So you kind of get 2 maps in one. But with that said, when it comes to these different modes, you only get 1 map per mode. Yep, unless you like that map, you're gonna get real bored real quick. While the single player is generically boring and kind of bad in a lot of different ways, this is so much worse. There's almost no content, it's predatory with pay-to-play practices, and you're going to get bored very quickly. Oh, but we're not done yet, because there's some balancing things that make no sense. If you get a certain amount of points in-game, you can choose that suit that you could get in the campaign. One of the things you can do is go full stealth mode, which honestly is okay, but you don't get more health or anything, and it's not that hard to see someone who is cloaking around, so this doesn't mean a whole lot. However, another one of the things you can get is that you can get a ton of health and dual-wield MP5s with advanced movement. This doesn't even cost many points. I was able to get this right away at the beginning of a game. This is absurdly broken. Once you get this, you will basically have it the whole game. No one can contest you. And here's what this looks like on the receiving end. What the fuck? I am dumbstruck at this. This multiplayer is absurdly bad. In conclusion, there is nothing here on offer for anyone. The campaign is generic Spunk Gargle Wee Wee that we've played plenty of 10 years ago, which is disappointing considering Remedy made it. And the multiplayer has tons of balancing issues, has tons of bugs, is predatory with its pay-to-win practices, and has a huge lack of content. Stay clear away from this game. But don't stay clear from my Twitch. Twitch.tv/Jared4GamingDragon. Huge thanks to everyone that joined me while I was streaming this game, and if you subscribe, you get to see my videos at least 1 week ahead of time. Big thanks goes to today's sponsor, Manscaped. Check that link down below in the video information. And a huge thanks goes to you for watching this video.